Hi BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and this was something I was going to do in December with all my other goals I was going to talk about, and how I was going to talk about how my reading went towards the end of December going into January. But I decided to go ahead and film this video now, because I felt inspired to take care of it now. And this was something that I've only done half-heartedly, I feel like. So I know a lot of readers are very interested in the show Gilmore Girls. This was a show in the early 2000s about a mother and a daughter, and the mom had her daughter when she was 16. She grew up in a wealthy household, but she felt suffocated in her parents. She felt like they didn't connect with her, and they didn't bother connecting with her and understanding her. And then when all this drama happened when she got pregnant, and her parents thought it was best that she get married to the father of her child, which it makes sense that they would think that. But she believes that they were not ready for that. They were not mature enough, and she decides to raise her daughter on her own. She runs away from home, knowing how her parents felt about it. And the father tries to establish his own life, and they do cross paths again, and later in the series. They do not that late in the first season. So as an adult, she is the manager of a local inn, the same inn where she was a maid and where she was taken in and given, a home and shelter, and kind of raised Rory, her daughter. And the show starts with Rory when she's 15 and she's in high school, and the first episode is about Rory trying to getting into this prestigious prep school, and so that it will kind of help her get into the college that she wants to get into, Harvard. But unfortunately, they don't have the money, and so forcing Lorelai to finally reconnect with her parents, and her mom insists that her and Rory have Friday night dinners with them. So the show focuses on them and their relationships with Lorelai's parents, Emily and Richard, and also focuses on their friendships, Rory going to school, their romantic relationships, and their bond as mother and daughter. And so one of the things that people really love about Rory, that they really connected with in the early days of the show, was that Rory is not only super academic, but she is an avid reader. She loves reading. She will read really books that some people might find very difficult, for fun, for pleasure. So on the internet, there is a list like this of all the books that Rory has read on the show, and they talk about some of them, not all of them. Some of these don't get as much attention. And also, one of the guys that Rory dated was also an avid reader, and they also have a list of his books, but I'm focusing on Rory's books. So you can mark off on the internet. You can mark off all the ones that you've read, and they will tell you what's the percentage of how many books of Rory's have you read. And on Goodreads, there's the Rory Gilmore Reading Challenge, where you talk about all the books that Rory's read and which ones you have read. And there's all these book clubs and online and stuff. So I printed out a copy of all the books I have read by Rory. I mean, not by her, that Rory has read. And I also wanted to go through all the books, not only the ones I've read, the ones I bought that I have not read, and the ones that I am not as interested in. So I'm going to go through all these. I won't spend too much time on them, especially the ones that I don't know anything about, or I'm not sorry, I still kind of have that cough. So if I talk a lot, then I eventually get a tickle in my throat. So I apologize if I'm coughing a lot. So I wanted to go through all the books, and starting next year, I want to read some more of them. And there actually are some people that have, like, some booktubers that I watch have their challenges that are separate from the Goodreads group, where they will spend a week or a weekend reading some of the books that are on Rory's reading list. So anyway, here I am going to go through all these, and I won't spend time on every single one of them. And I will mention the ones I have read, the ones that I want to read that I bought, and then the rest of them will just be books that I might I'll say if I ever heard of them or if I'm interested in a small way or not. So first is 1984 by George Orwell. I prefer his other famous novella over this one. Although I guess I don't know if it would be considered a short story, novella, or what, but 1984 is a novel. It's a dystopian. I've never really watched the adaptation before, but I did think it was kind of interesting. It definitely breeds food for thought. It's one of those government takes over, and our main character Winston is starting to rebel against the government, and he's keeping a diary, and he meets a woman that is also kind of rebelling against the government, and they sort of fall in love. And it was good. I just didn't have any strong feelings about it. I just didn't love as much as some people. I prefer his other famous book. So, Absolute Rage by Robert Tannenbaum. Never even heard of it until I got the copy of this list. The Age of Innocence, I really enjoy. This is an Edith Wharton novel. It's one of her more known novels. It's a love triangle where a guy is engaged to this woman named May. I think her first name is May. But then he ends up falling in love with her cousin, who was visiting, who has a bit of a scandalous reputation. Olena Alensky, and she is also married, or was married. But I think her husband died. And I thought, it is really good. It's heartbreaking, but still very good. And there's something special about Edith Wharton's writing style. It's very warm and cozy. Okay, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer. This is a situation where I did read in middle school. At the time, I just wasn't into them. I didn't like them, but after some consideration, I think at some point I might give these two another shot. Either get them and borrow them from the library, or maybe one day buy them on thrift books or something. But I've seen the adaptation, not the old one, but the one from the 90s with Jonathan Taylor Thomas. So it's more a Tom Sawyer adaptation. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Of course, most people have read that, and I want to reread that one. I really enjoy the adaptations of that one. But I feel like I should reread it. But I gotta admit, I didn't love it. I thought it was interesting, and I like all the retellings and adaptations, like I said. But I feel like I need to reread that one and see if I still feel the same way. Which is that, even though I understand that the point is it's nonsense, it's nonsensical. But I don't feel as much passionate about it as some people. I didn't read it as a kid either, so I just watched the Disney movie as a kid. All the President's Men, I have no interest in that. All the Pretty Horses was one that I did have a copy of, but then I eventually lost interest. The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. I had that one, but it sat on my shelf for a long time, and by the time I picked it up, I had lost interest. So it was a DNF. But I did like the concept. I thought the concept was interesting. It was like a comic book type story. These guys create a comic book. American Steel. I'm guessing that's about the steel industry. But I have no interest. American Tragedy. I have a mass market copy of it. I keep meaning to want to get a regular size paperback of it, but I still want to read that one. And then There Were None. That was a great, one of the handful of Agatha Christie books I have read, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the mystery of it all. These people knowing that they're alive, trapped on this island, and knowing that they're each being hunted down, and they all probably won't make it out alive. Kind of story, and not knowing why. Okay, so The Andy Warhol Diaries. I have no interest in Andy Warhol. Angela's Ashes. I have thought about it. I keep seeing that at the roast office in the vault, which is where all the nonfiction is. But I don't know. Angels in America. I don't know. Anna Karenina is one of the ones that I have, and I still have not read it, but I am still interested. This next one, Apocalyptics. This book about cancer. I just have no interest in reading about cancer. That Archimedean War. Don't know anything about that one. The Armies of the Night. Don't even understand. Going by the title, I can't tell what that one's about. The Art of Eating, I have no interest in that. The Art of Fiction, maybe. Because I read fiction. I love fiction, so that might be an interesting read. The Art of Living, not interested. The Art of War, not interested. As I Lay Dying, so I got a bind of some of Faulkner's works from the library, but I DNF'd. I attempted Faulkner, I just can't, I could not get into him. Atonement, I have seen the adaptation of that one. So I don't know if I will ever read that book. Okay, so An Autobiography of the Face by Lucy Greeley. I don't care. The Awakening. I have a copy of that one, and I've been meaning to get to it, but I've not gone to yet. So I need to check that. I need to get that. So maybe in 2023 I'll read that one, along with some of her other works in there. And actually, I did read a short story by her in the collection. I got this In the Shadow of Edgar Allan Poe, a collection of horror stories by various different authors that have similarities to Poe's short stories. And one of Kate Chapman's other works, Desiree's Baby was in there. So, and I think that is actually in the collection I have with Awakening. So, at least I've read one of them. And Babe, I don't know if this is about Babe Ruth or about the pig. And the farmer, that one story that has it. Because, I know there's a book about the pig Gordy. That was based on a book, too. So I don't know if it's Babe Ruth or Babe. If it's Babe Ruth, I'm definitely not interested. And even if it's Babe the Pig, I have no interest in reading about animals. Backlash, the Undeclared War Against American Women. I don't know if I'll ever get to that one. Maybe not. Bad Dirt. I don't know what that's about. Balzac and the Little Chinese Seamstress. I haven't even read anything by Balzac, so I don't know if I would be. Never say never, because I have read books about fictional stories about authors that are writers that, I actually like that story, even if I had not read any of their work. Okay, Bambi, I saw the Disney movie. Basic Writings of Nietzsche. So I do have another philosophy book, and I want to read that one first before I try any other philosophers. Canto, I think I've seen this one at the library. I don't know if I'm interested in that or not. Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. So I did read this one, and I thought it was good. I'm just not as passionate about it as some people are. But I do feel like maybe I need to get this one on audiobook and consume it via audiobook. So I don't know. But I understand, what this woman is going through, depression. And it's just, I couldn't even get into it. I do think there are some books on here that I only read because I feel like I should read it, because it's a classic and everybody loves it. So, Beloved by Toni Morrison. My sister has a copy of that one, so I could always get it from her. And I did like her Song of Solomon. I thought that was good. So I want to read more Toni Morrison. So, Beowulf. I enjoyed that. That was a book that I read that was an epic poem we read in the British literature class I took in college. Not my college, but when we moved here as just to take a class. And this one, along with the other epic poem we read in that class, got me inspired to check out epic poetry and get to that. I mean, it's like a novel, it's just written in a different format. Okay, The Best of Martha Stewart, Living. I have no interest in Martha Stewart. Bad Gaba Gina. I don't know anything about it, and I know I didn't pronounce that right at all. Big Love. I have no interest in that. Beletsky Brothers. The True Story of Three Men Who Defied the Nazis built a village in the forest and saved 1,200 Jews. I feel like I've read a lot about this time period in history, so I don't know if I would want to read another one. Billy Budd and Other Tales by Melville. So I have Moby Dick, and I did start it last year. I've read a lot of it, so I want to read that one first before I read anything else by Melville. And I did like it. I did like Moby Dick, and it's not as hard as I thought it would be. I was very intimidated by it. Okay, In the Praise of Difficult Women. I bet that would be interesting. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever get around to it, but I bet that would be very interesting to read. A Bolt from the Blue and Other Essays. I have no interest in reading essays. I may get into short stories, give the short stories a chance, but I don't know about essays. I mean, although I think I might have at least one book that's an essay collection. So maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe I will give essays a chance. So, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This one is a book that I read in high school, and I recently attempted to read it again last year, or in 2020. And, but this time I didn't like it as much. I had no interest in it, and I realized I just didn't like it. I mean, I'm that person who if we're assigned it, I will read it. If we're assigned it in school, I will read it. Okay, Breakfast at Tiffany's. I've heard about that one. I have not read it, and I haven't seen the movie adaptations, so who knows about that one. And I don't even know much about the plot of that one, so maybe I'll one day show interest in it. I don't know. Okay, Brick Lane. I have never heard of. Bridges of Madison County. I am familiar. I know there was a movie adaptation, but I don't know if I'll ever get to that one. Bridget Jones' Diary by Helen Fielding. So I saw the first movies. I have not seen the most recent one. But with stories like that, I would just rather watch an adaptation of it. I have no interest in the book. A Brief History of Time. That subject matter does not interest me. Brigadoon. I did have that one for a period of time, but then another situation where I lost interest. Brokeback Mountain, again, another one where I saw the adaptation. I saw another. This is by Andy Prolix, and I think there's another book by her on this list that I mentioned. So, but Brokeback Mountain was another one where I saw that. Oh, Bad Dirt. That was the other book by that author. Brokeback Mountain, I've seen the adaptation. I have no interest in the plot, but I did like the adaptation. I just have no interest in reading it. The Brontes, I am intrigued by the Bronte sisters and their brother, so that one I might read, but I don't have it. So, but I do have a book on their poems. Call of the Wild, and I have no interest in reading books about animals in nature. Candide by Voltaire. I don't know if I could get into that one. That's another one of those challenging type of classics that I just don't know if I'll get into. I don't know if it's, fiction, nonfiction. But it just might not be for me. I don't know. I would have to look it up. So Canterbury Tales. So I do have an unfair resentment towards Canterbury Tales because I was more interested in Hamlet and Gulliver's Travels. And those were the last two books for that semester when I took that British literature class. And we spent most of our time on that one after we read the two epic poems. And I just haven't. I admit the stories are amusing. They have a lot of body humor in them. but just I have a bitter dislike towards it because it took time away from reading Hamlet and Gulliver's Travels. In fact, we did get to Hamlet, but it was very rushed. Like, we didn't even really have a class where we talked about it. We just watched the movie adaptation. And that was, I liked it, but unfortunately it was hard for me to pay attention to it because there were guys in the back of the classroom just snickering and talking and stuff and just annoyed me. And I think they knew I kept glaring and looking back at them. They just laughed, which really pissed me off. So I want to see the adaptation one day again. So, and then Captain Corelli's Mandolin. I don't know anything about that one, but maybe one day I'll hear about it. Carrie, really loved Carrie by Stephen King. That one was really cool. And I read that a couple years ago, and I do want to reread it at some point. Okay, Catch-22, another DNF, which I got from the library. I'm tempted to read it, but I just could not get into it. Catcher in the Rye, I've read that twice. I liked it better when I was in high school, but now as an adult, I don't care for it. It's like, and the main character, I just, like, Holden, I understand he's going through depression, and it is tragic, and I feel bad, and it's disappointing and frustrating that he just is in such a place where he just thinks everybody's full of crap. And that, I mean, it is very sad. And I do like his relationship with his sister. But I just don't have any strong like for this book, you know. I just don't like it. And then Celebrating at the Jumping Frog. I don't know anything about that one. There's only a few Mark Twain that there's Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, Prince and the Pauper, and A Kid in King Arthur's Court. Better than that, those are the only ones I know about. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So I had listened to the audiobook for the first time because most people, I grew up with the movies, the two movie adaptations. I listened to it with my nephew, my 7-year-old nephew, although it's kind of hard because his attention span, even though he enjoys it, he can still get distracted easily and likes to play with his audiobook player. So there was parts I missed. But yeah, it was nice to be able to say I've actually listened to the actual novel. Okay, Charlotte's Web is one that I read years ago. I barely remember it, but I remember the adaptation, the original animated adaptation, and then there was a live action one with Dakota Fanning and Julia Roberts that I saw. I still will always love the original animated adaptation first and foremost. In fact, that's one of those animated movies I get very emotional about, like, especially. And this is going to be very interesting because most people cry. There's a certain part most people cry in. And yes, that part makes me sad, but I actually don't cry in that part. I mean, I do, get teary-eyed and stuff. But actually, the part that makes me cry is the part when Fern has to send Wilbur away and she's saying goodbye. And that part is actually what makes me cry more for some reason. Like, the other part, I just don't. It makes me sad, but, when I was a kid, I got more emotional when Fern had to send Wilbur away to her uncle's farm. That makes me cry more for some reason. But anyway, so I did read that one. It's just I don't, I remember the adaptations more. So, Children's Hour, I don't know anything about that. Christine, that's one of the Stephen Kings I have not read. I have no interest in reading about a possessed car. I mean, never say never, but at the moment I have no interest in reading about possessed vehicles. A Christmas Carol, everyone in the Western world is familiar. Most people in the Western world are familiar with Christmas Carol. And I was more familiar with the adaptations at first, and then one day I got the Barnes & Noble, that big hardback fancy naked hardback edition with all, 6 or 7 of his works, including Christmas Carol. So I read it for the first time via that one, and then I got a paperback copy, and I read that one. So I've read it so far 3 times now, and I've seen a lot of the adaptations multiple times. And my dad was playing The Ghost of Christmas Present in a community theater production of it. Okay, so Christmas Carol, and I really enjoy it. I think it's a beautiful story. It has a great message. Chrysanthemums, and I think this was another one of those ones that were in college or high school. You know, those big hardback bind-ups of a lot of famous works of literature that they want you to read in school that aren't novels. I think I read Chrysanthemums and that one, but I barely remember it. Cinderella, I've never read that. I don't think I've ever read the short story. I do have a Brothers Grimm bind-up collection that I got years ago. Not when I was a kid, but, you know, not that long ago. But I've never read that. I've never read it. I just know the story from adaptations, and then I have heard bits and pieces about the original story, like stuff that's not included in the Disney movie. And Clifford the Big Red Dog. I was always a fan of Clifford the Big Red Dog, and now my nephews and niece have watched, or at least my nephews watch Clifford. And I don't know if they're fans, but I remember being a fan. Like, I even had a marker holder that was we made it to look like Clifford. Like, made his face using red felt and taped it on the can, so it was Clifford's face. Where was I? Okay, so, and then Clockwork Orange. I've been hearing that. I've heard a lot about that, but I've never actually read it. I don't even know what it's about. Cloud Atlas was a DNF. I attempted to read it because it looked really cool. The adaptation looked really cool, I should say. And then I attempted to read it. But a lot of times when it comes to the longer books that I get from the library, I end up DNFing them because, you know, they're too long, and I feel this anxious feeling of knowing, okay, I gotta return this at some point. And it was one of a more slow-moving story. So that was a DNF. The Code of Worcesters. I've been hearing a lot about these books by P.G. Wodehouse. And never say never, but that, you know, detective stories and you know, you have to get me in the right mood for those. And I think, though, I prefer watching movie adaptations or TV show adaptations. Collected Stories by Eudora Welty. I don't know much about that. Comedy of Errors by William Shakespeare. So I do have, again, and it's a Barnes & Noble, those big hardback books with all a certain author's work, with the author's work in it. So that's probably in there, but but with Shakespeare, he's one of those, like, even though I have that big bind up, I almost would rather have separate copies of the ones of his that I want to read. Okay, Complete Novels by Dawn Powell. I've never even heard of her. The Complete Poems of Anne Sexton. Not familiar at all. Complete Stories by Dorothy Parker. I am familiar. But I don't know much about, so I don't know if I would be interested or not. The Confederacy of Dunces. By John Kennedy Toole. And I keep looking at this one at BAM and thinking about getting it, because it's, with its size, I would rather buy it. So I don't know, but I don't know if I would be interested. I would have to look up information. Okay, so finally we've gone to Connecticut, Yankee, and King Arthur's Court. I've never read. Basically, the only Mark Twain books I've read was Huck Finn, Tom Sawyer. And I don't know if I would like, you know, some people sadly find, I'm sorry to say, find Mark Twain boring. And I don't know if I feel that way because it was so long ago that I read Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. So I don't know if I would read it or not, but I would need to get a cheaper copy or get it from the library. Okay, Consider the Lobster, again, essay collection, I don't know, and I've never even read anything by David Foster Wallace. Contact, is this the same one that the movie with Jodie Foster? I don't know if it's the same one. I am getting more into sci-fi, so maybe one day I might want to read this. Count of Monte Cristo. I finally finished it. Got the audiobook because I've been reading for so long, and I was enjoying it, but it was still taking a while. So finally, I decided to get on an audiobook, and I finally finished it a couple years, like 2 years ago, and I really liked it. It was really great. It's a revenge story about and I think it's during Napoleonic Wars, if I remember correctly. And I really enjoyed it. It's just a long book, and there are parts of it where you're thinking, what does this have to do with the story? And like, is this important? Why are we spending time on this kind of situation? Okay, so finally we got into Balzac, Cousin Benny. Now every time though I think of Balzac, I think of Music Man, because the love interest in that one, Marion, is a librarian. Yes, Marion the librarian. And there's a song about these women that like to gossip in the town, including the mayor's wife. And they talk about Marion. And they warn the Music Man. I can't think of his name at the moment. Well, I know his real name is Greg. But he has a different name, a fake name. And I can't remember what it was. And these women are warning him about Marion, and there's all this gossip about her and this other man who, in town, this older gentleman in town, and they mention books that she has read, and she's a very avid reader. I mean, she works at the library, and they mention some famous authors, including Balzac, and that's how she says it. It's just, It's a cute and funny song. So that's when I think of Balzac, that's what I think of. So I don't know if I would be interested in Balzac or not. Maybe I would. Who knows? But Crime and Punishment, I absolutely love this. Now, I get that not everybody will love this book because there's a lot of philosophical discussions in this, and the main character who's, feeling guilty because he decided the only way he will have enough money to pay his debts is to murder a pawnbroker. And now he feels guilty and is worried about getting caught. That's what the whole book is, him worrying about getting caught. I mean, there's other plots, like him dealing with his sister, and she has these different suitors who, one of them tries to blackmail her. And, it's just that I think it's really good. I don't know why. Maybe I just read at the right time. I really enjoyed it. Okay, Crimson Petal in the White. This was one I attempted to read, but I DNF'd it because by the time I decided to read it, I kind of, I think I partly lost interest. And then I don't know how I feel about present tense. That was the writing style. I'm not the biggest fan of that. It just feels awkward when I read it. Okay, The Crises, I don't know what that is. The Crucible, I really enjoyed that. That was a play that we read in high school, and I've been meaning to reread it. It's about the Salem witch trials, but it's also really, they use the Salem witch trials as a metaphor for the whole, what is it called? The whole Red Scare and what happened in the 50s when all these people were accused of being communists, especially in Hollywood. And the FBI was trying to arrest all these people because of that. This is a big thing, and it turned into a bit of a witch hunt. So Arthur Miller uses that, the whole witch trials as a metaphor for that. And I really liked it. I want to reread it. So it's one that you could read as the metaphor for that, or you can just read it as about the Salem witch trials. It depends on how you want to interpret. So next is Cujo by King Kong. As a dog person, I don't know if I want to read a book about a dog with rabies, a dog going mad, and then, I don't know if I want to read that. The Curious Incident of the Dog. Again, sorry, my cough. Curious Incident of the Dog in Night Time. This is one I keep seeing at the library, and I have thought about it, getting it. So I don't know if I'll get it or not. But I thought about Cyrano de Bergerac. So I thought Cyrano was a Shakespeare, but maybe not. I think that's the one with the guy with he has a big nose, and he's in love with this woman, but another man is also in love with her, and he's seen as better looking and more handsome. So Cyrano, who's better at words, gives him letters and poems to read to the girl, to woo her. And it was a recent adaptation with, what is his name, from Game of Thrones? What is his name? I cannot think of his name at the moment. The guy, he plays Tyrion on Game of Thrones. I cannot remember his name. He plays Cyrano, and it's but instead of the nose, him having a big nose, they use the fact that the actor his stature is small. He has, I think it's called dwarfism. Don't quote me on that. But I think that's the politically incorrect term, I think, for that. I don't know. I'm not 100%. And if that's not correct, or if that's an insult, I apologize. It's just the only thing I know about it. I mean, and maybe I shouldn't say that, use that term anyway. So if I shouldn't, then I apologize. I should not have. But yeah, he's in it. I mean, but anyway, I wish I could remember the actor's name. But it kind of goes on that instead of the nose thing. And I do want to see it. It looks like a very romantic movie. Daughter of Fortune, Elizabeth Ellendi. And I keep seeing this author at both the roast office and the library. And I keep thinking about it. But I'm not sure. She's another one along with Joyce Carol Oates is another one that I keep thinking about considering. Okay, so David and Lisa, I don't know anything about that at all. David Copperfield, I love David Copperfield. I mean to reread it, by Dickens, and that's a coming of age story. And I want to reread it at some point. So Da Vinci Code, when I read it, I enjoyed it, I had a good time. It was fun. I like stories about conspiracy theories and religion, and but I know that people have issues, and there's stuff in there like sexism and stuff that. So I don't know if I'll ever reread that or some of his other works, but at the time I liked it. I liked the Da Vinci Code. Okay, so Dead Souls, Nikolai Gogol. I'm kind of curious about Nikolai Gogol. I haven't read anything by him, but I am interested. Okay, so Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. So this is the same guy who wrote The Crucible. And it's one that I thought about. I don't know much about it, but I have thought about checking it out one day if I ever come across it. Okay, Deanie. I only read one Judy Blume book when I was a kid. But I don't know if I'll ever read anything else by her. I know that she has some adult works as well as YA works. So, and I don't know what Deanie is. I don't know if it's a YA or adult work, but at the moment I'm just not interested. Okay, so Delta Venus. Don't know anything about that. Demons, I want to read that one as well, because I do, like I said, I loved Crime and Punishment, so I want to read more of Dostoevsky's work. So, and I'm currently reading Brothers Karamazov. Okay, so that's the other Dostoevsky work that I want to get to before I get to Anna Karenina by Tolstoy. So I want to finish that one. Okay, so Devil in the White City. I just read this one and I loved it. Although I get why not everybody loves it. And I do agree that it could have been two separate novels. And I found a loose connection, which is, I feel like, it's basically about the creation of the World's Fair in Chicago and Dr. H.H. Holmes and him killing all these people, murdering all these women, and the only connection I can find is that he was using the World's Fair as an excuse to lure people to him. And it's just, I think it's just kind of trying to look at the two events and how this was going on at the same time. This wonderful thing about the World's Fair was also trying to be created. And, so yeah, I liked it. And it's very easy to read, and I kind of liked the whole creation of the World's Fair. I thought that part of it was very interesting. But it was also interesting and disturbing to read about Dr. H.H. Holmes and how he would kill people. And it was also very frustrating with the people that he would kill, because I did not understand how they were so entranced by him, but there's just something there. It was just something about him. Diary of Virginia Woolf. I've never read anything by Virginia Woolf. I tried to get into her and read one of her books. Just couldn't get into the writing style. And this is, I'm guessing, a combination of some of her works. Some of her diary entries, edited by Olivia Bell. The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I did read years ago, and at the time it was sad, but I liked it all the time, and I was still interested in World War II at the time. Okay, The Dirt. The Confessions of World's Most Notorious Rock Band. I have no interest in reading about this rock band. I like rock music, but I have no interest about reading about rock bands. Okay, Divine Comedy. So I have that one. And I have not picked it up yet. I need to read it. I did read some of Inferno, and I liked it. It's just I haven't picked it up again. Divine Secrets of the Young Sisterhood. I've only seen the movie adaptation. I did attempt to read the book, I bought it, but then I just lost interest in the book and re-donated it to the roast office, because that's where I bought it in the first place. And it's a mother-daughter story. But it's easy. I just decided I preferred watching the adaptation. Okay, Do Androids Dreams of Electric Sheep? Like I said, I'm kind of getting into sci-fi, but I'm taking it very slowly. And I kind of like low sci-fi oftentimes, or sci-fi that feels a little bit like it could be fantasy. That's why I think I like Dune, the Dune series. Don Quixote by Cervantes. And I have this one. And I did attempt to start it, but I think it's another situation where I need to wait and, fully concentrate on it. Okay, so Downpour, I don't know anything about that. Dracula, I've read that twice now. I like it a little bit better than I did the first time, but it's still not my favorite classic, and I still did put on the donation pile. I think it's cool to read as one of the first horror books that has been part of pop culture for so long. One of the first, well, not the first, but one of the ones that became part of pop culture. And then Driving Miss Daisy. I've never even seen the adaptation of that one. Eat, Pray, Love, have no interest. I've seen bits and pieces of the adaptation with Julia Roberts and... Okay, so the Edgar Allan Poe, The Complete Tales and Poems. So I have two copies of some of his work, and I've read some of them. I've read Where's the Rue Morgue and its sequel, The Mystery of Maria Rogette, and MS in a Bottle, and The Fall of the House of Usher, and a few others, including The Raven. So I read some of them, but I'm not complete. I haven't read all of them yet. And there's some that I read years ago and I want to reread, because and then Eleanor Roosevelt, she would be interesting to read about, but I haven't read anything about her yet. Electric Kool-Aid, Acid Test. I've attempted one Thomas Wolfe book, but I just lost interest in him, and I attempted to read one of his books, and I just wasn't eager to read it. Okay, Elements of Euclid, and I don't know anything about that. Elemenopia and a novel Letters by Mark Dunn. I don't know anything about that book. Elmer Gantry by Lois Sinclair. Don't know anything. Eloise at the Plaza. And Eloise, so I have seen, the adaptation of some of the Eloise books years ago with, her grandma is played by, her nanny or grandmother, whatever, is played by Julie Andrews. And I don't know who plays Eloise, but that's the only Eloise I heard of, so. Okay, Emily the Strange, I don't know anything about that. Emma, I loved Emma. It's one of my, so far it's still my favorite, I think, of Jane Austen's works. Empire Falls, it's another one that I've attempted, or at least I bought a copy of it, and then I just never really got around to it, so I ended up losing, and I lost interest and pre-donated it. I remember liking the adaptation, though, and that was why I wanted to get it. I wanted to get the book, because I enjoyed the adaptation. Encyclopedia Brown, Boy Detective. And I think this was one of the ones I read, but I'm not 100% sure on that, so I did not put that down as, I didn't check that off as something that I've read. I think I might have read it. Okay, I'm gonna be right back. I will be right back. I just gotta... So, this section of my room, I didn't have the light on, so I decided to turn the light back on, so. Okay, where was I? Okay, Essentials of Economics. I want to read about economics. I hate math. I despise math. So I want to read about economics. Okay, so Ethan Frome. The first time I read Ethan Frome in high school, at the time I didn't care about it. I decided to reread it, and I loved it. And I read it it was 2 years ago or a year ago, and I really enjoyed it. Again, I love Edith Wharton's writing style, and it's just another tragic story. And it has a similar situation to Age of Innocence in the romance aspect of it. Okay, ethics. I don't want to read about ethics. Europe through the back door, the Travel Skills Handbook. So, I am not going to Europe anytime soon. I have been there to some of the countries. Not many, but I have been there. And, maybe one day if I might decide to read that. But I might find a better book. I don't know how old that book is, so. But I believe that was a book that she probably got and read when her and Lorelai were planning the trip to Europe. Okay, Ava Luna. Again, Elizabeth Allende, and I don't know if I'll ever get around to her or not. I mean, I am a little intrigued, so I don't know. Everything's eliminated. I don't know what that's about. Executioner's Song. Again, Norman Mailer. Another. And I don't know if I would be interested in that one. Extravagance. Don't know anything about. So, Fahrenheit 451. I reread this around the same time as I reread Catcher in the Rye. And I liked a little bit better than Catcher in the Rye, but I am more interested in Ray Bradbury's other works. Okay. But I still liked it when I reread it. It's just Fahrenheit 9/11. I don't want to read about 9/11. I was there. I mean, I wasn't in New York when they attacked the Twin Towers, but I remember it. In fact, I was in middle school in my tech ed class when I first heard about it. Which, that was my last class, so I didn't hear about it. I don't remember hearing about it until the end of the day. And I remember being, I remember being a little nervous because my dad was in D.C. near where the Pentagon was at the time, so I remember worrying about him. The fall of the Armenian Empire. I have no interest. Fatland, How Americans Became the Fattest People in the World. I have no interest. Fear and Loathing, Las Vegas. At the moment, I have no interest. I don't know if I ever would, but Fellowship of the Ring. So they have this list all 3 books in Lord of the Rings. Although, before anyone corrects me, I do know originally it was published as one big book. It's just each part was published a year simultaneous after the other. So now a lot of people publish it as separate. And maybe that's to do with Peter Jackson's movies too, but but it does, on this list, it has all of them, each part, and that's one that I want to reread. I want to give it another shot because, well, I shouldn't say reread because I never actually finished it. I only read the first couple chapters of The Fellowship the first time, so I want to get to that again. Okay, Fiddler on the Roof. I did not even know that was a book, but I did see the musical. I love the musical. Finnegan's Wake. Okay, so that's not the James Joyce book, but I do have a James Joyce book. So I want to read that one first before I get to Finnegan's Wake and see. And I am determined to enjoy it and to appreciate the one I do have by him because I spent my money and got it at BAM. So, Firewall by Lawrence Walsh, don't know anything about. First Folio, again, William Shakespeare, and that one, maybe that one, it will be in that big Barnes & Noble bind-up, I don't know. I think it's all of his works in that one, so maybe I'll get to that one day. 5 People You Meet in Heaven, not interested. Flavor of the Month, not interested. Fletch, not interested. Flowers for Algernon, I'm kind of interested. I imagine it's going to be a sad story, although I don't cry in books. I'm more prone to cry in a movie than a book. So, I don't know if I'll ever get to that one, but I'm kind of intrigued by that one. Where this guy is given drugs to make him more intelligent, and it's very sad, from what I hear. Okay, Fedora selected Hotels of Europe. Not interested. The Fortress of Solitude. Not interested. The Fountainhead. I've heard some stuff about Ayn Rand, so I don't know if I'll ever read, but my sister does have it. It's 2 of her books, so maybe one day, but I could always buy it if I ever am interested. Like if I hear positive things about it, but I've heard some not so great things about the author, so I don't know. Frankenstein. I love Frankenstein. It's one of my favorites, and I've been meaning to reread it. And this is a classic that I feel how it's just not really gotten a fair treatment with the way it's portrayed in Hollywood. Like, it's a lot deeper than Hollywood. Like, the creature is not this dumb brute that just walks with bolts on his head and everything. He's so much more than that. And he's not just some dumb brute and a monster. He's actually very philosophical. And he's a sad, tragic figure who just wants to live. I mean, I think... Now, I never saw the one Kenneth Branagh version, but I know the Van Helsing movie, I think they improved on it a little bit with how the Frankenstein creature is portrayed in pop culture. Their version of him was a little more closer to the book. Franny and Zooey, I read that. I thought it was okay. Freaky Friday. I didn't even know it was a book until a few years ago. I only seen the adaptations. Frida. I don't know if that is Frida Kahlo, but at the moment I'm just not interested. Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut. I don't know how I feel. I don't know if I'm going to ever be interested in Kurt Vonnegut. I attempted him once, but I should say I didn't really attempt him. I was just told. I just lost interest. Okay, Gender Trouble. I don't have any interest. George W. Bushin-isms. Not interested. Gidget. Not interested. Gigi. Not interested. A Girl from Yam Hill. Not interested. Girl Interrupted. I did see the movie adaptation, so maybe one day I'll read it. The Glass Menagerie. We read this play in high school, and I thought it was intriguing. So maybe one day I'll buy it and read it again. Glenn Gary and Glenn Ross. I don't know anything, so I don't care. Gnostic Gospels. Don't care. The Godfather. I haven't even seen the movie adaptation, so I don't care. The God of Small Things. Another one of those that I keep seeing at the bookstore at the library, so I thought about it, but I don't know. Goldilocks and Three Bears. Bears should share. Okay, so I guess that's not the actual short story by the Grimm's brothers, but it is it's, I guess, a nonfiction about the that uses the short story. But anyway, I never heard of it. I don't even think I'm familiar. Of course, I know the short story, but I've never actually taken the time to physically read it. Gone Girl, have not read it. Not interested. Gone with the Wind. I read it at the time. I really liked it. Scarlett is one of my favorite characters. And maybe I'll reread it someday. I don't know if I'll ever. I do have a hardback copy. Then I have the mass market copy, but I might have gotten rid of the mass market copy. Goodnight Spoon. I'm guessing that's a kid's book. And I never read it as a kid, so. The Good Soldier, not interested. The Gospel According to Jesus Christ, not interested. The Graduate. I never even saw the adaptation. Grapes of Wrath, I have that and I do want to read it at some point. I loved East of Eden, so I want to read that one next. And I remember seeing the play years ago when I was like, I want to say I was 10 at the time. 10 or 11. I feel bad though because I fell asleep. Like my dad, bought the tickets and I feel terrible that I fell asleep. But I was tired and I was a kid, so. Great Expectations. Love it. I want to reread it again. The Great Gatsby. Love it. Want to read it again. Those are two of my favorite classics. The Group. I don't know anything about that one. Gulliver's Travels. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. I was entertained by it. And I do want to, maybe one day I'll reread it again. Like maybe buy a copy this time. Guys and Dolls. I didn't even know that was a book. I remember seeing the musical and I enjoyed the musical. Haiku Volume 2. I don't know anything and I never even heard the first volume, so I do not know. Hamlet. I love Hamlet. It's one of my favorites. Harold and the Purple Crayon. I think that's a kid's book. And I did not read that one as a kid. Not that I remember. So, of course, yes, I'm gonna bring it up. Harry Potter. It has the fourth book and this first book, and I think she's read all the books. All the books are on this list, I think, or maybe not. But you guys know, of course, I read Harry Potter. A Heart-Working Staggering Genius. I read David Eggers' The Circle, and really enjoyed it. I've not read this one though, and I don't know if this is nonfiction or fiction, but I've never heard of this one. The only book by David Eggers that I've heard of, like I said, is The Circle, which I think was really good. And that book scares me more, the premise of that book, because it's basically the idea of not exactly dystopian, but this internet company that the main character gets a job at. They are basically like Google and Instagram and Tumblr and Facebook and YouTube all combined into one thing, and everybody participates. It's kind of like it's kind of like how it is now, only worse. So that one scares me more. That we might actually get to that point, but I'm not familiar with this other one by him. I didn't even know he had written anything else. In all honesty, Heart of Darkness. I did not realize that book is really not that short. It's really short, actually. It's not that long, or at least it doesn't look that long. Because I watched Greg from Supposedly Fun. He showed that book as one of classic he is interested in reading, and it didn't look that long. So, but I've heard a lot of people not love it and think it's kind of boring, so I don't know. Hell's Angels, the strange and terrible song of outlaw motorcycle gangs. Not interested in. That's such an interesting book for Rory to read. A book about motorcycle gangs. Some of the books that they say she's read or have been mentioned on the show, I'm surprised. But maybe it's not necessarily one that she's read, because it says at the top, as a subtitle, also says that books that are mentioned on here on Gilmore Girls. So maybe she didn't read it. So, like, I'm wondering if some of these books that she didn't actually read herself, but they were mentioned or other people read them. And other people in her life. So not interested. Helter Skelter, this true story of the Manson murders. I don't know if I want to read that. I mean, true crime is intriguing, but, with those kinds of books, just like with Devil in the White City, I have to read and be willing to read it, be in a certain mood to read it. So this, also all parts of Henry the Fourth, his works, I mean, not his works, but Shakespeare works, each one I have not read. I've only read a few Shakespeare. He's just not that into you. I saw the movie adaptation, but never read the book. I thought about reading the book, but I never got around to it. So, High Fidelity, I've never read the book, but and I've never really watched the adaptation. I've seen parts of it. And this is another one, The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. I have it. I have not picked it up yet, but I am interested in reading it. And particularly ever since I read earlier this year, back in January, I read SPQR by Mary Beard. And also Steve Donnie, who talked about it in his one of his March of the Penguins videos. History of the Peloponnesian War. I'm not interested at the moment. Maybe one day. History of Tom Thumb. Not interested. Hockey for Dummies. I think Rory probably read that one just to impress a boy. Maybe Dean attempted to play hockey or something. I don't know. Holiday on Ice, story on ice, not interested. The Holy Barbarians, not interested. Horton Hears a Who, I saw the movie adaptation, but that's one of the Dr. Seuss books I've never read. House of Sand and Fog, mildly interested in. I've seen it a couple times, but I've never bought it or had the urge to pick it up, but maybe one day. House of Spirits, again, Isabel Allende. Maybe one day. And I think I've seen that one at the library, so maybe. And I think I've seen it at the roast office, but with the roast office, it might be gone. Howl and Other Poems. Don't know. How to Breathe Underwater. Not interested. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I read it, I think. Love it. One of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. How the Light Gets In. I am not interested. I don't know anything about it. How We Are Hungry. Okay, another David Eggers book. So he's written a couple more books before The Circle, I guess. I don't know. I have no interest. The Human Factor, not interested. The Hunchback of Notre Dame, a DNF. I prefer the animated Disney movie. I attempted it and it just was a little too boring for me. And I have not given up on Victor Hugo, because I do have Les Miserables, which is on this list that she has read, which that makes sense. That along with Hunchback of Notre Dame, I could see her reading those. So, that was a DNF, sadly. I Feel Bad About My Neck by Nora Ephron, and I'm just not interested in reading about anything Nora Ephron. I like her movies, and may she rest in peace. The Iliad, I intend to read that. I read the Odyssey first, which I should have read the Iliad first, because that was actually about the Trojan War, and then the Odyssey is the aftermath. Well, not the aftermath, about one of the characters and what they do after the war, and them going home, trying to get him to visit his wife, Penelope. Trying to make it home to her. I'm with the band. Not interested in Cold Blood. I don't know, maybe. Indiana, I don't have no interest. The Inferno, again, so this is the first one, the Divine Comedy. So, like I said, I intend to read that, the Divine Comedy. In the Shadow of Young Girls in Flower. I don't know. I don't know if I could get into Marcel Proust. In fact, he kind of scares me a little bit. Inherit the Wind. I don't know. The Invitation, don't know. Ironweed, don't know. It Takes a Village, I have no interest. Jane Eyre, one of my favorites. Coming of age story about this young girl who her parents die. She lives with her abusive relatives. Ends up going to a religious school for girls. Gets abused there too. And then becomes a governess to this guy's ward, Mr. Rochester's ward. And they fall in love. And a lot of people do not get that. And I don't either now as I've gotten older. At least that part of the story. I think most people love Jane Eyre, right? I mean, I believe people would probably like Jane Eyre more because of Jane's story, not necessarily her romance. Although I'm sure there are a lot of people who love the romance still. Joy Luck Club, really liked that one, and I read another one of books by Amy Tan. It was pretty good. Julius Caesar, one of my favorites. Although I think my opinion towards it is also influenced by the way my teacher in high school talked about it, and I think I kind of had a little bit of crush on that teacher. Those are basically the days before Julius Caesar gets betrayed and gets stabbed 13 times because they fear he's become a dictator. Okay, The Jungle. I don't know if I'll ever read that. The Jungle Book. I am kind of interested, and I did, again, this was another situation where I bought my nephew the audiobook card for his Yono player, and I got bits and pieces of it, but I didn't hear the whole thing. So this might be one that I might buy a copy for. Okay, Jurassic Park. I actually surprisingly liked it. I mean, the science was a little hard for me to follow, but I mean, I've seen the movie, so that helped. I think that really did help me, with that part, because he does talk a lot about the science. But it was actually a really cool book. And once we got to the part when the dinosaurs are set loose, it picked up, and it got a little more exciting and kind of scary. In a good way. So, I liked it, actually. Just a couple days, don't know anything about it. The Kitchen Boy. I would be kind of curious about it. I'm kind of curious about Russian literature. I'm kind of interested. Kitchen Confidential, Adventures in Culinary Underbelly. I don't care. Kite Runner. I liked it. I read it in high school. It's a very sad story about two best friends. Lady Chatterley's Lover. I had a copy, but I lost interest. LaRousse Wind. I never heard of it. The Last Empire essay collection. I don't know. Okay, so we have volume 1 and 2 on Winston Churchill. Oh, and 3. And not interested in them at the moment. Last Word by Graham Greene. Not interested. Leaves of Grass. That's another one that scares me, and I don't know if I could read it. Although, Murphy Napier, who has dyslexia, I believe, if she can read it, maybe I could read it. Legend of Bagger Vance. I saw the movie adaptation, but I've never read the book, I don't know if I ever would. L'Epistera. So, like I said, I'm interested in this. And first time I read it, I did not realize I read the unabridged version, and I didn't like it at the time, and I preferred just watching the stage show or the movie adaptation with Jeffrey Rush and Liam Neeson. And then I really liked the most recent adaptation. I know a lot of people don't. Not everybody likes it. But I think it's good. I'm entertained by it. But I recently finally bought another copy so I could get the whole story, and I like it a lot better now. You know, I mean, I haven't got to the part with the sewers where he really dives deep into the sewers, but Less Than Zero, I've seen parts of the adaptation, and the only reason why I watched it, it's normally not my kind of story, but because RDJ played the main character Julian, and thankfully I actually remembered that. I'm very impressed that I remembered that. It's a guy who gets into drugs and about his life and drugs. So it's kind of like similar to Trainspotting, I think. And but I've never watched the whole thing or read the book, so I don't know. Maybe one day. So Letters of Ayn Rand. Like I said, I don't know how I feel about Ayn Rand. I've heard a lot about her. Letters of Edith Wharton. That one I might read one day if I ever come across it. Letters to a Young Poet. Rilke. One particular booktuber is getting me really interested in this. Emmy is, I still don't know if that's her, I think that's her channel name, Emmy. And she's a big fan of Rilke. And I am definitely intrigued. It has gotten me more intrigued. She's one of the booktubers she's a booktuber, you know, that has gotten me interested. There's certain booktubers that get me interested in certain books I normally wouldn't consider before. Or in this case, poetry. So, Libation Bearers, I don't know anything about this. I think that this looks like, the author's name looks like Greek. So, maybe it's ancient literature. Okay, The Lies and the Lying Liars Who Tell Them. I don't know. I have no interest. I don't know anything about it. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. So, I don't know if I'll ever read this or not. I mean, maybe I should. Although I know I won't agree with her getting rid of, picking only 30 books. I could not do that. Okay, The Life of Pi. I have heard about that. I remember when that came out and was really popular and it was adapted. So I've never read the book or seen an adaptation. Never say never. I might get around to it one day. Life of Samuel Johnson. So, I recently heard this book was brought to my attention via Jennifer Brooks, and I kind of got intrigued. So I might, if I ever come across it at the roast office, or I might get it thrift books. I'm definitely intrigued. Like Water for Chocolate, and this was one of the ones that I have heard. I do remember hearing about that. I don't know if I'll ever get around to that. I don't know if I would be interested in that or not. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I saw the movie adaptation, and I know my brother-in-law has read it to my nephews. So, I don't know. I have seen I think the roast office, the library has all the books, so maybe one day. But I can admit, I will confess that I do feel self-conscious when I get middle grade, and if I decide to get kids' books aren't, the target audience is for kids. Because I've had people say things to me like, you know, the YA books are over there, or the adult books are all here. This is middle grade, and, and at the time I was like, well, I like to read this kind of stuff sometimes, but I gotta admit, I shouldn't. I should be able to not feel comfortable reading what I want to read. But I can't help it. And sometimes, if I read younger stuff, if I'm not in the right mood, I can get easily annoyed by it. Forgetting that I have to remind myself I'm not the target audience. So I need to be more patient and understanding because I'm not the main audience. Okay, so, but I'm thinking about checking out, and oh my god, I think this book is on here twice. Lisa and David. Yeah, I think this book is on here twice. But still the same feelings as I before. I'm not interested. Little Dorrit, again, Charles Dickens I have not read, and I do have it, so I want to check it out. I think this woman is living with her father who lives in debtor's prison. And of course there's a romance. So I want to check that one out. Little House in the Big Woods and Little House on the Prairie. So I did have a collection of Little House books, but I am ashamed to say this, I never read them. I never picked them up. And I had them in a whole box set. I think they were given to me as a gift, which makes me feel, that's why I feel bad about it. Because I never read them and they were a gift. And I know those box sets of series are kind of expensive compared to individual books. So I feel bad. So maybe one day, you know, my niece ever gets into them, maybe I'll read it with her. The Little Locksmith, I don't know what that's about. The Little Match Girl, I want to say I have read that one, but I'm not sure. I think I read that once. Little Women, DNF. I love the movie adaptations. The two that I'm familiar with, the 1994 and the 2019. But I DNF the book. It was a little too sentimental for me. I couldn't get into it. But I like the movies. So Living History by Hillary Rodham Clinton, I'm not interested in at all. Lolita, not interested. I don't want to read about a pedophile or from a pedophile's perspective. I don't feel comfortable with that. But I do understand that it's trying to there's a point why it's doing that, but I don't want to read that. Okay, Lord of the Flies. I have thought about reading Lord of the Flies, but I don't know if I will ever get around to it. Because, again, I feel like there's just some classics that I read just because I feel an obligation to at least try them. But then I end up being like, about them or just hating them. And so, I don't know. Okay, so Lord Jim. I attempted Joseph Conrad, but I could not get into him. Now, granted, Lord Jim was not the one I attempted by Joseph Conrad. Okay, see, so here's where I actually said Lord of the Rings. So I don't know why they have Lord of the Rings on here like 4 times, because they have all 3 parts, all 3 volumes, and then they have Lord of the Rings itself. That doesn't make any sense. The Lottery and Other Stories, I am interested because I did like her Haunting of Hill House. I do want to reread that one. And then Lovely Bones, I read that one. That's sad. Like I said, though, I don't cry in books. I'm more prone to cry in a movie than a book. Love Story, don't know anything. Macbeth, like I said, I want to get around to that. Although that's not the Shakespeare I want to focus on. This winter, I'm gonna try King Lear because I bought it at Barnes and Noble. A separate paperback copy, and it was one of the special Barnes and Noble editions, not those big hardbacks. It's a paperback, but so I want to read that one first. So, Madame Bovary, not interested. Madeline, is that the one with the little girl going to the prep school? I think it's. If it's the one that I should say I have read it. Manicore, I don't know anything about. Marathon Man, don't know anything about. Oh, that's the same. It's also by William Goldman, same guy who wrote Lord of the Flies. So, Mary Poppins. I love the movie, the original movie. I haven't seen the new one, you know. The Master Margarita. I want to read that one. I have that. And I didn't start it, but I haven't picked it up. Okay, right away. The Mathematical Principles and Natural Philosophy, not interested. The Matiste, the Master, not interested. I don't know anything about Meaning of Consuela. I don't know anything about that. Maybe I would be interested. Meditations, not interested. Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter by Simone de Beauvoir. I don't know if I would be interested. Memoirs of General William T. Sherman, not interested. Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus, not interested. Macon Crestomathy, not interested. The Merry Wives of Windsor, again, might get around to it one day. Me Talk Pretty one day, not interested. Metamorphosis, did not like it. I read it in high school, did not like it. Middlesex, I attempted to read this one, but just lost interest. And the premise itself is makes me a little uncomfortable. So, Midsummer's Night's Dream. I have seen the movie based on the play. I've never actually read the play, but I have seen the play too, so I want to read it. The Miracle Worker. We did, again, another one where we did the play in high school. I was part of the crew, but I have not read the book. I would be kind of curious about it. So maybe one day I'll read it. Misery, loved it. About a famous writer who decides to stop writing a series of books and kill off his main character, and his number one fan gets pissed. And when she crosses paths with him and finds his body in a car accident, she brings him back to life and nurses him back to health and holds him hostage until he writes a version of the story for her where the character comes back. Mr. and Mistress of Melvin, don't know anything about. Okay, here we come across Moby Dick. So, so I did start this one, and like I said before, it's surprisingly not that hard to read. I mean, I know there will probably be parts that are boring to me, but, like all the whaling talk, but it's not that hard. And as Jennifer Brooks says, once you know what you're getting into with it, I think you can get into it. So I want to get that one first before I try anything else by by Herman Melville. Mojo Collection, the greatest albums of all time. I'm not a huge hardcore music fan. I do like music, but so Molaire, I'm not even familiar with Molaire. I've never read anything by him, so Molloy, Samuel Beckett. I don't know anything about it. Mommy Dearest. I'm guessing that's a horror, and I think it was a movie. But so maybe I'm interested. I don't know. A monetary history of the United States by Milton Friedman. I don't know if I'm interested in that one. Masha Proust. I don't know. I mean, his writing scares me, so I don't know if I want to read about him. A March. And not that it's more just, he doesn't write about disturbing stuff. He writes, I think it's fantastical stuff, but it's just a lot, and I don't know if it would be challenging for me to read, so that's my reasons for that. Marcel Proust makes me nervous. And I think that's a biography of him, so I don't know if I'll... A Month of Sundays, Searching for the Spirit and My Sister. I don't know if I'll read that one. Motley Crue, I don't know. The Morning Bride, don't know. A Movable Feast. I have no interest in Hemingway at the moment. I mean, never say never, but I just... granted, I've only read one work by him, and it's his Farewell to Arms, so, maybe some people say you should give him another shot, and I have thought about it, but at the moment I'm not interested in Hemingway. Miss Dalloway, like I said, I have a hard time with her writing style, so. Mutiny on the Bounty, I do kind of intrigued by pirate stories, so I don't know if I'll ever, or adventure stories, so maybe. My First Summer in Sierra, I don't know anything about. Report of the Massacre and its Aftermath, not interested in. My Life as Author and Editor, not interested in. My Life in Orange, growing up in the Guru, with the Guru, I don't care. Myra Waldo's Travel and Motoring Guide to Europe, not interested unless I'm able to go back to Europe. My Sister's Keeper, I really enjoyed that book. I'm not that happy with the direction the movie went, but the book was really good. And the movie wasn't bad, it's until the ending. That was where some of the stuff they changed. That was My Sister's Keeper. So, My Struggle, never heard of. The Naked and the Dead, never heard of. Naked Lynch, never heard of. I'm currently reading The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. It's a bit of a mystery. It's a mystery. But also talks a lot about religion, and it's not like today's modern thrillers and mysteries. It's a lot slower. And I'm currently reading it, so I don't know how long that's going to take me. The Namesake, read it. I enjoyed it very much. Very heartbreaking read about this guy struggling with his identity as an Indian American, and Nancy Drew and the Witch Tree Symbol. I've read some Nancy Drew books. I don't remember which ones, but I remember I liked Nancy Drew at the time. Nanny Diaries, not interested. Native Son, I have it. And I borrowed it for my sister, so I'm going to get to it soon, so I can give it back to her. Although I don't think she's gonna miss it. Her and my brother-in-law, I don't think they miss a lot of the books, because the kids aren't old enough to really, like I said, the oldest is 7, so they're not old enough to appreciate a lot of the classics. Okay, Nature's Metropolis, not, Chicago and the Great West, not interested at the moment. Nervous System, not interested. Oh, well, actually, no, maybe I'll be interested. New Poems of Emily Dickinson, maybe I'd be interested. I do have an Emily Dickinson collection of poems, but it's not that one. The New Way Things Work, not interested. Nicholas Nickleby, I do have it, and I will get to it. And actually, some of these books that I mentioned that I do have and I want to get to it, I do have a separate list. So, since I've already, I'm not going to separately talk about this because this video is already super long. But I am intrigued by it and I want to read it. I'm trying to read all of Dickens' work. Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America, not interested. Nights, I read that one. That's again another sad story set in the 30s and 40s. And I didn't realize there was a sequel to it. But we read that in high school, and I liked it at the time. It was really sad. So, and No Man is an Island by John Donne. Not interested. I have read John Donne's poetry. Northanger Abbey. I just read that this year, back in July, and I liked it, but it's not my favorite Austen. Norton Anthology of Theory and Criticism. Maybe one day I'll read it, but Notes of a Dirty Old Man, not interested. Novels, 1939 to 42. Dance Night, Come Back to Toronto, Turn Magic. I don't know if I'd be interested. I don't think so. November of the Heart, not interested. The Odyssey. So like I said, I read The Odyssey, and I actually enjoyed it, despite how it doesn't have a lot of female characters, and they don't play the best roles in the story, except for, maybe his wife and stuff, but I was very entertained by it, and I really liked it. So, Oedipus Rex, I think I have it. By Sophocles. So, I think I have it and I can do it. I think that's the one where the guy does not realize he's fallen in love with his mother. Or something. Or his sister. Like, those Greek plays were always weird. Of Human Bondage. I have heard of this book on Buffy, actually. Like, this guy she meets on her college campus, he's also a freshman, and it's his security blanket, that book. I remember, Buffy was confused when he mentioned it, because she thought he meant literal human bondage, and did not realize it was a book. And it was actually, the actor who played that character was, I can't think of his name, but he's the Mandalorian, and he played, Prince Oberyn, but I cannot think of his name for some reason. That was that same actor. Of Mice and Men, reread it recently, and I enjoyed it. I still don't absolutely love that book, but I did like it, and it's a sad story. The Old Man and the Sea, again, we have Ernest Hemingway. It's a shorter one, so maybe one day I will read some more Hemingway, but at the moment I'm not interested in his writing, in his misogynisticism, and although I remember I got I did get a response on my review that I did a few years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, so I barely remember it, and I feel bad that I couldn't really give them, the person that commented on the video who liked the book, I couldn't really give them a proper discussion on it, and really talk about why I didn't like it. And so, unfortunately, I feel bad that I couldn't really give them a discussion, but I remember just not liking it. And not liking his writing. So I probably will not read maybe one day I'll give Hemingway another shot, but I'm just, at the moment, I don't feel inspired. Old school, not interested. Oliver Twist, I loved Oliver Twist. I do mean to reread it. On the contrary, not familiar. One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. Again, another Russian novel that I cannot pronounce the name. And I do want to get more into Russian literature, so maybe I'll read that one. Okay, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I guess, although I feel like, can I really say this is a DNF? Because I think I maybe read one or two pages of that one, and I just decided that I was no longer interested. 100 Years of Solitude. This was a DNF. I attempted it, and I just couldn't get into it. An Origin of the Species. I meant to do it for either Nonfiction November or October, but I never got to it. And I'm pretty deep into the books that I'm reading right now for Nonfiction November, and they're not nonfiction. So I guess they're not for Nonfiction November, but for November in general. But I do want to read that. I bought it, so I do want to read it. On the Road. Not interested. The Opposite of Fate. Memoirs of Writing Life by Amy Tan. Maybe, because I've read a couple of her books. Oracle Night, don't know anything. Orations, don't know anything. Oresta. Okay, so I think this is about Agamemnon. So I don't know. Ornyx and Crake. I read The Handmaid's Tale, but, Margaret Atwood just doesn't interest me. Although that one sounds a little bit more intriguing than the other ones. Othello, I will get around to that at some point. Our Mutual Friend, I want to get around to. I did start with that one first, then I picked up another Dickens, Dombey and Son, so I will get back to Our Mutual Friend. The Outbreak of the Peloponnesian War. Not interested at the moment. Outlander. I read it. I read the first two books in that series. I have not continued it. I liked it, but I don't know. I lost interest, and I guess it's partly because I don't care about the romance as much. It's sweet and all, but I would rather probably watch the show. Out of Africa, I thought about buying it once. But I haven't gotten into it, so I don't know if I will ever be interested in that. The Outsiders, of course, most kids probably have read The Outsiders in, U.S. schools. And I thought it was okay at the time. I didn't have any strong feelings about it. Okay, this is The Complete Works of William Shakespeare. Passage to India, I recently just bought that. And so, obviously, I do want to read it at some point. Peace of Nisaias and the Sicilian Expedition. Sorry, I totally butchered that. I don't know anything about it. Perks of Being a Wallflower. I have read Stephen Chbosky, but it was Imaginary Friend. I have not read Perks of Being a Wallflower, and maybe one day, but at the moment I'm not interested. The Persian Puzzle, not interested. Personal History, not interested. Peyton Place, not interested. Picture of Dorian Gray. I love that book. I reread it recently, a couple years ago. I really liked it. Definitely recommend if you get into classics. It's one worth checking out. It's not that long. Pigs at the Trough. Never even heard of it. Pinocchio. I have not read that one. Again, I've only seen the adaptations, like the Disney movie, and not the new live action version, but the original version. Please Kill Me, the uncensored oral history of punk. Have no interest. Plutarch's Lives, maybe, might be interested. Poems by Alfred Lord Tennyson, might be interested if I get into poetry more. Points of View by W. Somerset Monaghan. I don't know. At the moment, I have no interest. Polysyllabic Spree, not interested. Pomeranian, Owner's Guide to a Healthy Pet, not interested. In fact, sadly, we don't have our pets anymore. We lost both our dogs. We had to put both our dogs down. earlier this year. So, Portable Dorothy Parker. Not interested in Dorothy Parker at the moment. Portable Nietzsche. Not interested because, like I said, I have another philosophy book, another famous philosopher that I have not read. So I want to start there before I try any other philosophers. Price of Loyalty. Not interested. Pride and Prejudice. Read this twice now. Now, if you count Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, because it's basically the story but some added scenes, I've read it 3 times then. Absolutely love Pride and Prejudice like everybody else, but surprisingly, it's not my favorite Austen. Primary Colors, don't know anything. Princess Bride, I've seen the movie adaptation. I don't know if I would like the book or not. I know a lot of people prefer the movie adaptation over the book. Property, not familiar. Pump House Gang, not familiar. Punk, the definitive record of revolution, not interested. I mean, I like the idea of punk music or whatever, but I'm not interested. The Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate, I'm not interested. Pushkin, a biography. I want to start with reading some Pushkin works before I even attempt a biography by him. Pygmalion. I've never read it, but I did read the musical that was based on Pygmalion called My Fair Lady. Not read it, but I've seen it. And that's Pygmalion is based on that. Or I mean that is based on the Pygmalion. Okay, this is another one I don't know how to pronounce it. Quattrocento. I don't know if I said that right. Never heard of it. A Quiet Storm, never heard of it. Olier Bamboo, never heard of it. Rapunzel, I've not read the fairy tale before. But, like everybody, I'm familiar with the fairy tale and the details. The Raven, I did read it years ago. I don't, I want to reread it again, so it's fresh in my mind. The Razor's Edge, not familiar. Now the author Somerset Monaghan, I am familiar, not just from reading the other books by him in this list, but I've heard that. Lolita. Well, I've never read Lolita, and I'm not interested in reading Lolita, so I'm not gonna read this, which is Reading Lolita, Tarantin, a memoir in books. Rebecca. Love Rebecca. I'm one of those people who loves Rebecca. I think it's such a great book. How many more pages? Okay, 2 more pages, and then I'm done. I hope this video didn't bore you guys and you were interested in it. And maybe if you've read maybe some of you have read some of these and you can tell me. Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, and I think I had a copy of this one before, but I've never read it. Read the Red Badge of Courage, and I read it the summer before we moved here, and it wasn't bad. I didn't mind it. And it was a fast read. I mean not super fast. I'm still kind of slow, but it was quick. I got through it quickly. And I thought it was pretty good. The Red Tent, I have not read it, but I think I've read another book by this author, Anita Diamant. I don't know if I'm saying her name, but I think I read something else by her. I don't remember what it was, though. Rescuing Patty Hearst Memories from a Decade Gone Mad. Not familiar. See, again, the Return of the King on here. So what was the point? Why did they put all of the books? Revolution from Within, a book of self-esteem. Not interested. Richard III. Anything by Shakespeare I'm intrigued by and I want to read at some point. As for Ricochet, I'm not interested in any Sue Grafton books. Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. This is a novella by King in his seasons collection, where each of the novellas in there, it's divided into the seasons. And this was an adaptation. There was an adaptation in it. That was made. So I want to read that one. I have that bind up, so I'm going to get to it at some point, although it's a mass market copy. Robert's Rules of Order, not interested. Roman Fever, it's Edith Wharton, so I am interested. Romeo and Juliet, didn't love it. I mean, I understand its importance and how, like, these two young teenagers falling in love brought their two families together and ended this horrible feud. And of course, you know, it's Shakespeare and his language is amazing, but and beautiful. But I just, I mean, I feel like you can't really help if you don't like something, even if it has even if it has an important message about society. And it doesn't necessarily mean you don't understand the message or don't appreciate the message. It's just you just happen to not like the story. A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Like I said, I don't know. I just can't get into Virginia Woolf and her writing style. A Room with a View. I do want to read that one because I have Passage to India, and then I read what's another famous? I cannot remember what it's called. Rosemary's Baby. I've never read. There's maybe I would be interested. And it was adapted along with Ira Levin's other most famous novel, A Rough Guide to Europe, again, unless I decide to go to Europe again. Sacred Times, never even heard of. Sailing Alone Around the Room, new Enslaved Poems. If I get into poetry, maybe. Sanctuary by Faulkner. Like I said, I did try Faulkner and just could not get into him and his writing. Satanic Verses. That would be intriguing to read. Savage Being the Life of Edna St. Vincent by Millay. I'm not that familiar with Nancy Milford. And there was another book by her that I mentioned. But I don't know about that. I would be interested. Say Goodbye to Daisy Miller. I don't know how I feel about Henry James. Again, I mean, I do believe that there are some authors that potentially there might be one book in particular of theirs that you like. Okay, so I'm not sure if I have this one or not. The Scarecrow of Oz. I don't know if it's in that one bind up of Oz, 6 novels of Oz, which I have it on the nightstand right here. I don't know if it's in there, and then my sister last year got me a couple of books in paperback from that series, so I don't know if I have that one. But I have not read that. I've only read 2.5 books from that series, so I've been meaning to, and I need to do it sooner rather than later. Scarlet Letter. I had thought about that one, especially since Olive from Book Olive did a good, intriguing review of it. So I thought about giving the Scarlet Letter another shot. And I think it can help to read those outside the classroom, some books outside the classroom. Schindler's List, not interested. Seabiscuit, not interested. Second Sex, not interested. The Secret Life of Bees, I read this as a kid, like my preteen years. And I remember liking it. It was good. But I barely remember it. But I just remember liking it. Secrets of the Flesh, A Life by Colette. I'm not interested. I don't know if it's the same woman. You know, there was recently a movie starring Keira Knightley where she was a famous woman who wrote a series of books, and someone else claimed a man like her husband or something claimed to be the writer. I don't know if it has anything to do with that, like if that's who that's about. Selected Letters of Dawn Powell. Not interested. Sense and Sensibility. I love this one, and although I have not thought about what the order of my Austen books, because I have not read Lady Susan yet. A Separate Peace. I reread that a couple years ago, and I did like it. I did like the writing. Okay, Sex and the City. I've seen some of the show, but I've never read the book, and I probably will never read the book. Sex Us. Don't know anything about The Shadow of the Wind. I read that, and I've been meaning to read. I had thought about reading the series because it is the first book in a series. Like, there's 4 books, but I don't know if I'll ever do that. I did like Name of the Wind. I love the writing, and I like the whole idea of this kid, like, this young man coming of age and picking over this book, and it turns out that there's a special mystery around the book and the author. Shane, don't know what that is. Sherlock Holmes, DNF. I tried Sherlock Holmes, and like I said, I feel like with detective stories, I would rather just watch movies or TV shows. The Shining, love The Shining, about the haunted Overlook Hotel. The book. Now, I've never really seen the Stanley Kubrick movie. I did see Dr. Sleep, the movie adaptation. And I've never seen the adaptation of The Shining that Stephen King himself did. Sid Arthur, DNF. I attempted to listen to that on audiobook. I got it for free, and I just was bored. S is for Silence. Again, I'm not interested in Sue Grafton, the sisters. This Song of the Mitford family. At the moment, not interested. The Skin of Our Teeth, Thorn Wilder, not interested. Slaughterhouse 5. I did attempt it. Sleeping Beauty. Again, never read any of the fairy tales, but I know some of the details. Small Island, not interested. Slows of Kilimanjaro. Again, Ernest Hemingway. At the moment, just not interested in any more Hemingway. I do want to check out Snow White and Rose Red. I mean, I want to check out all the Grimm's fairy tales, because I do have a bind-up of, I don't know if it's all of them, but Social Origins of Dictatorship and Democracy. Lord and Peasant in the Making of Modern World. Not interested, have no interest in politics. Or at least not modern politics. Like, I would be intrigued in reading about the Roman Empire, but I have no interest in reading our politics. Something Wicked this... Okay, so this is the Ray Bradbury I'm interested in. And I read this earlier this year, and I really enjoyed it, and I want to read it again, you know? Or it might have been 2021 that I read it. I do want to read it again. And I want to read some of the other books by him, especially because people say he's great to read for this time, for October. Songbook, don't know anything about Song of Ice and Fire series, love it. I watched the show, I've read the first 2 books, or at least the first book and half of, actually no, I have read the first 2, I only read half of the second one, the third one. So, I started rereading it this year. Song of Names, don't know anything about. Song Reader, don't know anything about. Song of the Simple Truth, The Complete Poems of Julian Burgos. I don't know if I would, like I said, at the moment, I'm struggling with getting into poetry, but I recently got like I said, I got an Emily Dickinson collection, so I'm still trying to get into poetry. So, Sonnet 43 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And I think I have that one. I don't know if I actually read that. I have to check. I'll have to look in that collection to see if Sonnet 43 is in that, because then I have read it. The Sonnets by William Shakespeare. Again, Shakespeare, I definitely want to read everything by him, or at least try to. Sonnets from Portuguese. Again, this one, I might have read this one. This one might have been in that collection. Sophie's Choice, I'm familiar with, but never read it or saw the movie. Never saw the movie. Sound and the Fury, again, William Faulkner. I just am not sure about him, if I would be interested in his work. Like I said, I attempted and then I just couldn't get into it. Speak Memory, Vladimir Nabokov. And I don't know if I would like anything by him other than Lolita. I might like some of his other works. I'm just not comfortable with Lolita and its plot. So I might like some of his other works. Solid Biography, I would be curious. Stepford Wives. Okay, so here's the other Ira Levin book. I saw the remake adaptation of the movie, but I've never seen the original. Stiff, The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers. Just not interested. The Story of Dr. Dolittle, nope. Story of My Life, maybe. That's about Helen by Helen Keller, so that's a maybe. Story of, don't know what that is. Strange Grace of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I read it. I was disappointed by it. Everyone talked about how great it is and how horrifying it is, and it's like, I feel like I was missing something. I attempted it, and I think I was, I think it's one of those horrors that's ingrained in pop culture that's like, I expect a lot more for it, and I'm not getting it. It's one of those classics that I probably expected more, and I just was disappointed. Streetcar Named Desire. I don't know if I read this one or not. I mean, I don't think I read it. But I would be interested. Stuart Little by E.B. White. So that's another of the audiobooks I got for my nephews and niece. I've never read the book, but I saw the movie adaptation where Michael J. Fox voices Stuart Little, and you have Gina Davis, and I can't remember the actor's name. The guy, he's on House. He's the main guy. He's House. I cannot think of the actor's name. Summer of Fear, not familiar with. Again, Ernest Hemingway. Nope. Swan's Way. So, like I said, I don't know if I can read Marcel Proust. Maybe I could. Swimming with Giants by Encounters with Whales, Dolphins, and Seals by Anne Collette. Not interested. Sybil. Maybe. A Tale of Two Cities. My first Dickens, and I loved it. And, I read it 3 times. And I want to read it again. So this is one of the Edgar Allan Poe poems that I have read. I read it years ago and I want to reread it. So I have read it, but and then we have Tender as the Night, and I read it and I just couldn't appreciate it like some people do. I did not have any connection to it, which I feel bad for saying, but I just didn't. Terms of Endearment. I'm familiar with it, but I've never read it. Tevye, The Dairyman and the Railroad Stories by... Which, I'm wondering if this has to do with Fiddler on the Roof. So, Theater by W. Somerset Maugham. I would be kind of interested in that one. They shoot horses, don't they? I don't know about that. The Finn Man, I don't know. Thunder, don't know. Time and Again, don't know. Timeline by Michael Crane. I love Timeline. I thought that was such a great story. Again, I feel like there are some authors that it just depends. You might like some of their work, but not everything. Timeline. Okay, so this is the Michael Crichton. Oh, wait, no, I just talked about that. So Timeline, Time Traveler's Wife. I read this years ago. I remember liking it when I read it. And it did recently get adapted again as a TV show. To Have and Have Nots. Nope, again, Hemingway. To Kill a Mockingbird. So this was the other classic I mentioned before, where I read it, and then I feel like I need to reread it, because I read it at such a young age, and maybe I need to reread it when I can appreciate it more. The Town and the City. Jack Kerouac, I'm not interested. Richard, again, Shakespeare. And I am intrigued by it. I want to read everything by Shakespeare. Okay, so this is the other one that's similar, that I feel like it has a similar conflict to the other one. Which I cannot think of what it's called. Less Than Zero. Less Than Zero. So Trainspotting, because both Less Than Zero and Trainspotting is about these guys on drugs, getting addicted to drugs. And I think that one of them, Trainspotting is the guy trying to get away from it, trying to get clean, but it's not as easy. So, and I only saw it because there was an actor and there were actors in it that I liked. I watched the movie adaptation. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I really liked this one. The Trial. I don't know if I would like The Trial. I did not like Metamorphosis, but maybe I would like The Trial. Who knows? Trouble in Our Backyard, Central America and the United States in the 80s. Not interested. The True and Outstanding Adventures of the Hunt Sisters. Not interested. Well, never say never, because I do like stories about sisters. Truth and Beauty, a Friendship. Don't know. Again, The Two Towers. So I don't know why. Why did they include Lord of the Rings and all three titles of the three plot? Why? What was the point of that? They're not separate books. Tuesdays with Maureen, not interested. So this is the James Joyce book that I do have. And I think it does kind of have that same Virginia Woolf type of writing style. So I don't know about this one. But I bought it. I spent the money at Books A Million, so I am determined to give it a shot. Again, The Unabridged Journals of Sylvia Plath. Even though I didn't absolutely love The Bell Jar and want to give it another, and feel like I need to give it another shot, I would be kind of curious about that, about the Journals of Sylvia Plath. The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I never even heard of it. Uncle Tom's Cabin. That's a classic that you heard of, that most people have heard of. So maybe I'll read it one day. Understanding Power. Not interested. Unless not interested. U.S. Foreign Policy and Iran Hostage Crisis. Not interested. Valley of the Dolls. Maybe. The Vanishing Newspapers. Maybe. The Vanity Fair. Yes, I'm interested. I have it, so maybe I'll pick it up and check it out. And the Velvet Underground and Nico, not interested. The Virgin Suicides, not interested. Visions of Gaudi, not interested. Waiting for Goddard, not interested. Walden, not interested. War and Peace, definitely interested, and I did start it. I need, but it's a long one. We Owe You Nothing, Punk Planet, The Collected Interviews, not interested. What Color Is Your Parachute, not interested. What Happened to Baby Jane, I'm actually kind of interested. I heard about, I got an explanation and look at the movie. I didn't actually watch it, but this guy was analyzing the movie, and so he explained the plot and stuff. So I'm kind of interested in that movie and the book. When the Emperor Was Divine, not interested. When Everything Changed, not interested. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, not interested. Who Moved My Cheese? Is that a kid's book? So Wicked and the Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West. I just recently reread it because I read this years ago. It's a first book in a series about the Wicked Witch of the West, and her origins. And I personally loved it. Now, I think if you love the musical or love the original Wizard of Oz series, then you might not love it as much, but you might still like it. But I thought it was really good. It deals with, the politics of the world of Oz and, rights, political rights and stuff like that. But it's also has a lot of mature content and is a very dark story. Wild by Cheryl Stray, not interested. The Wine Bible, not interested. The Witches of Eastwick. Maybe. And here is the famous Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which I loved, and I have a soft spot for. Wuthering Heights, love it. The Yearling, not interested. The Year Magical Thinking, I don't know. Yoga for Dummies, not interested. In Zorba the Greek, not interested. So I've read a total of 80 books on this list. And that's nothing compared to how many books are actually on this list. But I want to read some of them. So some of the ones I mentioned that I am interested in and that I mentioned that I had them, I would like to read them. But anyway, so that is all the books on the Rory Gilmore Reading List and all the books that were mentioned on the show Gilmore Girls. Like I said, I think some of these, I don't think Rory herself actually read them, but they were mentioned on the show. But then again, Rory might have had surprising taste. I think she would be willing to try anything. But I think this is kind of a fun thing to do. It's kind of like, those people who like reading some of the prize list. I think you might like checking out Rory Gilmore's reading list. And maybe check out Jess Moraine. I cannot. Mariano. Just Mariano, I think that's how you say it. That is her boyfriend that also liked reading. He has his own list as well. That you can find. So, if you liked Gilmore Girls and, check this out. It's kind of fun, to just check out which ones of her books that you have read and which ones you are interested in reading. I hope this was an entertaining video and didn't bore you guys. I know it doesn't, I wasn't diving deep in these books, but this is just more of a list of going over the books I read by her. I mean not by her, that Rory has read, going over the ones I have read and the ones that I'm interested in reading, and so anyway, I'm going to shut up now because this video is far too long. Hopefully it will upload, and if it doesn't upload, this video does not even matter. And I'll try, and I might try it again. So anyway, if you like this video, like I said, weren't too bored by it, then give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you have not already. And if you want to, and you can click the bell icon if you want to be notified when I post videos. And I hope you all are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. All right, bye!